So we've just gone by the festive season. It has come and went. And I decided to answer a few questions. The first one is from the young ones, from the children. They asked, "Uti Malume, why do you always like watching anime or cartoons and, instead of watching live action movies and stuff?" And I explained it to them perfectly. Uti, 90% of what we call live action movies when it comes to the comic genre, they suck. They're terrible. They're trash. Yeah. This other nigga goes, get trash. I feel none of the people who actually make those movies know anything about the comic book genres. When I was growing up, the reason why we were into comics was because it was giving us something bombastic. It was invigorating our imagination. It was something that was so amazing that you would always feel bigger or faster or smarter when you read a comic book. But in the movies, when you watch any of these movies, all you feel is either sad or just waiting to see the conclusion of what's happening. It's got nothing to do with the story. I'm sorry. Almost every movie I've ever seen that has got to do with comic stories, it's always the beginning of. It's always like like how many Fantastic Four origin stories can ever come out? Every single movie that has got to do with the Fantastic Four is always an origin story because it's different people who don't know what the hell they're doing. So they want to tell it in their way instead of actually going to the comic book and using it as a source. You would think that something that is drawn panel for panel, which is what I would know since I did a little bit of animation, is part of storyboarding and creating the story. That is literally how movies are also shot. Yet here you get a free storyboard where you can just take and translate. No, 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 no. They're gonna add their own things. They're gonna create their own characters and they're gonna add something as stupid as love. Love has got to do with everything. Every Superman movie, it's got to do with Lois Lane. When we were reading the books, the comic books, Lois Lane is literally like less than 2% of the story of Superman. Less than 2%. Everything, it's about Brainiac, him fighting all the other random Kryptonians that seem to have escaped from the destruction of Krypton, fighting different monsters, going into parallel universes, amazing world building stuff. Yet every time we are watching a movie, a live action movie, it's always the translation of him and his relationship with his wife. It's so stupid. When you look at Batman and Superman, Dawn of Justice, that movie was supposed to be two heroes and fightings and seeing each other as the villain and fighting. Oh, mother, hayi bo imali engaka sayikhokha imali phela ukuthenga amathikithi. So you start realizing that the people that actually are trusted to translate the comic book into a movie follow the the movie tropes, which is what I would say, uh, trying to make things real. We never watched anime for anything real. If I wanted to watch something real, I'd rather watch a real movie, right? Or I'd go actually see something happening, watch a live show. But we watch and we want to be entertained, right? That's why we watch anime. These are stories that are incredible. Incredible stuff happens. One guy can bench press a whole bus, a school bus, and still act normal. We love those amazing things. Yet in the movies, especially the Western movies, oh my goodness, it's terrible. They have done such injustice to their own work. The only reason why Infinity War was good was because they couldn't ruin Jim Stalin's stuff. Jim Stalin wrote so well that even when they try to ruin it, it still worked out. That's why you'll never hear me saying anything about Endgame because that was a whole piece of trash. Like the whole thing, stupid messages. It had nothing to do with the comic. I've just understood that, and that's why I try to explain it to the young ones. When I watch Anime, when I read a comic, I'm trying to escape reality to another world. And when I put down that comic book, I feel like the hero or I feel like the villain, or, Yet, whenever I'm watching something that I've actually paid like 10 times more, like the value of to go and watch, to buy the food, the popcorn, to, pour gas, all those things, and then only to leave going, yeah, it's so annoying. It's so annoying. And then they say, come back, there's more to be continued. It's like, what? Continue what? This farce. Look at a perfect example, that movie with Angelina Jolie and that whole cast. When they were doing that movie, they changed the entire idea of what that in of what those characters were, you know. So what I would say is Americans are terrible at storytelling when it comes to translating something that's written and putting it on video. And they follow the rules of the cinematography. Whereas in you're not supposed to follow the rules when you're doing comic books. That's why it's a comic book. It's a comic book movie because, you know, 10-story mothership will show up anytime at the White House, you know, and try to take over, and all sorts of things will happen. Martians coming from somewhere, and invading. When you take that kind of approach and you want to, like, from comics, and you want to bring it to a movie, then they start looking at, oh, the costumes. They start looking at things that have got nothing to do with the story. So I believe that is why I do not partake in the Marveling and the DCEUing. I mean, you see what DCEU, it was an amazing thing. That extended universe was amazing. It had at least it had a great potential, I'll say that. Black Adam, incredible movie, but they hated it because it had no love. It had no, it wasn't too Caucasian enough. I don't know what it was, but the one movie that actually was close to comic books, they actually hated. And the movies that are always led astray and not close to comic books, they're the ones always revered. So that's why I cannot uh, partake in Western live action movies of comic books. It doesn't work. Whereas when you look at the Asian side, when they redo their comic books or their manga or their shonen, it's on another level. When you see Bleach, which was done on Netflix a few years ago, it's literally almost line for line, word for word, but done so well. The story, it's not realistic at all, yet it's real characters. Love that. When you look at Full Metal Alchemist, the Japanese, the Japanese know what the hell they're doing. The Chinese also know what the hell they're doing because they actually respect the comic or the shonen or the manga. They respect the craft. Whereas in with the Hollywood side, it seems like there's a slate of Hollywood directors and Hollywood actors that exist in a studio at a time. And they probably just keep swapping each other like the NFL, and then whoever gets the slate of maybe 10 movies in the next 12 years, they'll just be, okay, take him. He'll direct that and we'll get that actor on that movie. And then boom, it worked out, at least with Captain America. When the Russo brothers and Kevin Feige and them were running with Captain America, it worked out well. Most of those movies were actually amazing, top tier. To this day, I'll still say the most consistent superhero franchise was that. It definitely wasn't the what is it? The Avengers. The Avengers was very inconsistent, quite terrible at times and amazing at times, you know. But standalone, the first Black Panther movie was great, even though it lacked a whole lot, but it was quite good, very well translated. Some of the characters, they actually were in the comics, very well done. And then you look at the Captain America series. That whole series was actually quite good. The rest of the nah, all it's all lackluster. Let's not even talk about X-Men. That is like the biggest injustice ever. The X-Men were all reduced to it's always about Wolverine pining and being creepy with Jane, what's her name? Yeah, with that woman, Jean Grey. And they are always doing some weird love triangle with Cyclops, which never works out. Not even one movie has actually made it right when it came to the X-Men franchise. The closest was the Days of the Future Past. Now, it was only because they were retconning a lot of what they had actually done in the previous side. I mean, we read the X-Men, and when we were reading X-Men, when you hear X-Men, you think the Sentinels, giant, huge, mechanical beasts that are like, you can't even imagine their scale. And when they do the live action, they're almost human size. And people are supposed to be scared of that. But yeah, I think I've gone for too long. I've answered all the questions I believe that were posed to me as to why I hate uh, the live action stuff. Hi, peace.